What's up, everybody? Blessed be. My name is Manon, and you're watching Witch in the Working, where we will be discussing all things witchy in and around, throughout and about, above, below, and beyond. So when I started this series of videos a few months ago, my whole intent was to share my experiences and knowledge I have collected over the last 30 years during my journey down this long and tedious road of Wicca and witchcraft. I remember when I was first starting out, the excitement and wonderment of this new discovery that enveloped my life. And just as equal, I also remember all of the questions and feelings that I had during this time, especially feeling like I wasn't doing something right, or like I wasn't quite learning the right things, or I was missing out on something, or was I on the right path, etc., etc. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the things I wished I knew 30 years ago that would have made my journey not necessarily easier, but definitely a little less clouded over in the insecurity area. With that being said, let's do it. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, so a little backstory on my behalf. When I got into Wicca/witchcraft, again, being a British traditional Gardnerian, they're the same thing to us. But regardless, I too had always been interested in the occult as a child, but never really delved into it until my later teen years. So one day when I was 18 years old, the goddess struck me full-fledged, and it's been a journey like no other ever since. And I'm sure I have a shit ton of journeying to go coming up in the future. It's like my high priestess and witch queen Lady Diana once told me, if you get bored on this path, you simply stopped searching the shadows. Go to them, light them up. What are you afraid of? So, luckily enough, I lived just a few miles from a few craft-based stores that I had been driving by for years and stopped in and loaded myself up with a few books per the owner's direction. Little did I know, 10 years later, one of those owners would be the woman who actually brought witchcraft and introduced it to the state of Florida back in the 70s from Long Island, New York. So my journey began, and I never looked back, starting off as an eclectic solitaire, moving forward to running an eclectic coven called Children of the Dancing Moon, and ultimately joining a British traditional witchcraft Gardnerian coven, starting my own traditional witchcraft coven called Path of the Sacred Pentacle. And here we are, 20 years later, still running a Gardnerian coven with a healthy branching downline. So, what was the most important step I took when first getting into Wicca? I will let you know right after this commercial break. Sorry, just kidding. I couldn't refuse. I wanted to try it out. Seriously, the first thing, most important, is seriously read. Now, disclaimer, I'm a witch. I practice Wicca, so this specific tutorial is going to cater to those who have already discovered and decided that they want to pursue a Wiccan/witchcraft career. Some others will get something from this too, but I'm being a little biased in this specific tutorial, which makes sense because I really don't practice Druidism, ceremonial magic, Asatruism, etc., which are different systems of magic than Wicca. But regardless of your practice, you should be able to take something from this video and apply it to your specific path. Get some books, whether hard copy, digital, or even audio books if you must. But I recommend you stick with books that you can actually put on a shelf and highlight and take notes. I don't know. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but this method has been golden for me, especially when you can pick that book up 20 years later and see what you highlighted and gathered from that text during that particular time when you were on a particular path. Does that kind of make sense? I mean, anyways, get some books on Wicca, witchcraft, paganism, Druidism, the occult in general, rituals, high magic, low magic, in-between magic, herbs, oils, incense, and brews, etc., etc. The list goes on and on. But I recommend if you are on this path as a witch/Wiccan, try to stick with books that are about this subject, or if you're on a different beginning path than, Druidism or something, then try to stick with books to your path. Not forever. Don't be closed-minded, but just in the beginning, a sort of fine-tuning, so to speak. You can ultimately delve into some extracurricular studies, but for now, as a beginning witch, there's plenty for you to ingest in this world of Wicca alone, without confusing yourself and mixing everything up from a bunch of different systems of magic and Religio Magic. This world that you've stepped into is huge and so extensive with teachings, concepts, ideas, spiritualities, lessons, practices. I mean, seriously, there's so much to learn and experience, it's pretty much infinite. There's no one person who knows everything in the occult and is well versed in more than just a couple of practices. It's like I've said many times before, there will always be seekers, but sometimes it's better to dig one deep well for wisdom and knowledge than a bunch of little holes trying to fulfill your emptiness. The books are your torches. The paths are the shadows you need to enlighten so that they in turn can enlighten you. In today's day and age, there's endless information thanks to the internet and Google, Bing, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. The list goes on and on. There's no lack of information that can be found and ingested on a daily basis. However, I do recommend being very careful about some of the information you do find online, as just like everything else, some of it can be quite shady. So consider the sources of what and where you're learning from and keep a healthy perspective. If something doesn't sit well with you, then by all means challenge it, and challenge it with the intent and power of the witch you are, with confidence and patience. Keep an open mind and respect others' opinions above all. See all of the perspectives and get the whole story before any judgment is passed. And if judgment is passed, keep it to yourself and move on. No one says you have to continue with that particular source, and there's a lot that definitely need to be taken with a grain of salt. So read, watch, listen, and learn as much as you can, about as much as you can. But as I said, I completely recommend that you pick a path by doing some research and go with it for a while before delving into another completely. Unless you simply feel like the one you chose isn't working for you, then by all means move on. Another awesome thing you can do along with jumping in and getting your hands dirty is to do a little research and see if you can find some local gatherings that take place in your particular area. See if you can find any occult stores in your nearby vicinity. Literally do a Google search for nearby occult stores. Failing that, do a search for nearby bookstores and see if you can't pick through them and find the needle in the haystack of a particular store that will specialize in occult needs and wants. It may take a little research, but in the end, it will be well worth it, trust me. Occult stores are many times the hub of the pagan communities for miles around. For some, like myself, living in South Florida, these stores are a dime a dozen, but for others, more rural America, they can be very far and few between. Regardless, it doesn't hurt to check. You may be surprised at what you find. These stores will often host events and gatherings that will give you a chance to meet others like-minded, and they also often put on public rituals and especially classes to teach a wide variety of witchy practices. So check it out, do some research, see what you can find. It's well worth it for the beginning witch and opens up avenues that can be beneficial for years to come. There are many great online witchy sources also, whole online communities that can be very rewarding. Facebook is great for this especially, with an endless amount. You just have to choose and pick through the ones you'd like to be a part of, and hopefully again, reflecting something in your area. Many times, a particular Facebook group will actually have the name of their region in the title. For instance, South Utah Witches and Pagans, or North Florida Pagan Gathering. As you get more into rural America, the Bible Belt, it may get a little tougher, but not impossible, and I'm sure you can find something no matter where you live, pending you at least have internet access. What is important is learning and knowing the basics of what Wicca and witchcraft really is and the world it creates. What's important is knowing the history of where we come from and what we practice, knowing the elements and their purpose within the craft, knowing why we utilize a magic circle and when to cast one, knowing what the spiritual side of witchcraft expresses to others, and how utilizing these concepts helps us to grow spiritually, which in turn flows downstream to emotional, mental, and even physical positive growth. What's important to learn is the structure of a typical ritual, the erecting and closing of a temple, for instance, the importance of the seasons and how we celebrate them, along with how nature itself and cycles of such, again, the seasons, the moon, the sun, the tides, ebb and flow, how all of this ties into our spiritual practice and builds a foundation beneath your witchy little feet to walk a strong path moving forward. These and much more are the foundations of your craft building blocks, not so much on whether you decide to work with crystals or not. Again, these things, working with crystals, only working with the ocean, only working with herbs and plants, these are all fine and dandy. But as far as I'm concerned, these are all things that are the icing on the cake, so to speak. The actual cake itself, the solid foundation that the icing goes on, is what you should be concerned with as a beginning witch. The rest comes later, after you have a solid foundation. Also, keep in mind that Wicca in particular is a Religio Magic. What does this mean? It's a religion, one of many that also incorporates magic practice in its structure. There are many Religio Magics in the world today. Santeria and Voodoo are two of the most common along with Wicca. I just wanted to clear this up so there's no confusion. Not all witches practice Wicca, but all Wiccans are for the most part witches, especially if you're a British traditional Wiccan/witch. There are some people that claim to be Wiccan and not practice magic. Never seen it before. Every one of the hundreds of Wiccans I personally know today practice magic. Another aspect to be aware of as a beginning witch is that you will see the word eclectic tossed around quite a bit. So what does this actually mean? There are basically two types of Wiccan practice today, which consist of being eclectic or traditional. An eclectic Wiccan/witch is a person who practices Wicca but is not part of a specific tradition of witchcraft. We all, including myself, almost always start off as practicing Wicca as an eclectic, learning our teachings from books and other sources that are not of a traditional background, so to speak. British traditional witchcraft on the other end of the spectrum is an initiatory tradition of witchcraft such as Gardnerian, Alexandrian, or Georgian, for instance, that has a very strong foundation and a lineage of initiates that will trace back to the founder of that particular tradition. For instance, I myself am a 7th generation Gardnerian that traces back to Gerald Gardner, initiated in 1939. In a tradition, you learn most of your practice from others in that tradition and from books of shadows passed down through the decades and even sometimes centuries. Most traditions have what's called a lineage tree that will show all of their priests and priestesses dating back to a certain time period of that particular system's acknowledgement in history. At the same time, as a beginner, you may be introduced to coven work with other witches. This breaks down into two categories, which involves solitaire or coven-based. Again, like the eclectic, most everybody starts off as a solitaire witch, again, as did myself. So the majority of witches in existence today are in fact solitaire eclectics. I would say the next largest group would be coven-based eclectics, followed by coven-based traditionalists. You really don't find many solitaire traditionalists. Most traditional witches almost always work with a coven. But this being said, as a beginner, as I mentioned earlier, it's always a plus and a bonus to find others of like mind to at least be able to confide in and help with the challenges of being a newbie Wiccan, as the waters can get pretty deep sometimes. So I've linked in the info box above a video on the subject of eclectics, solitaires, covens, and traditionalists, and also linked in the description below. Another very important tip for the beginner: there's a lot to learn and a lot of topics that grace the pages of the many books and sources you'll be reviewing. The history of witchcraft, the foundations, the rituals, the spells, tools, ethics, religious aspects, gods, goddesses, the elements, circles, altars, sabbats, esbits, moon phases, folklore. The list is endless. Take your time, be patient. You will learn things as they come up. Don't try and learn everything at once. Keep an open mind and just take in what you can. It's not the destination, it's the journey. Just like if you stuff your mouth with too much food at once, you won't be able to swallow and will end up spitting some food out. Your brain works the same way sometimes, especially with this stuff. So take your time and chew your knowledge as it comes. You will learn what you need to learn, I promise this. So many people get overwhelmed in the beginning and then confusion and fatigue set in and you begin to get frustrated and misguided. It's not necessary, just chill out. You have nothing to prove to anyone but yourself. Knowing this, what I just said, don't be afraid to try out some of the rituals that you may read about, especially the sabbats. You'll most likely never see the same ritual written in two different books. The rituals of Wicca are not set in stone as the same practice for each Wiccan group or tradition. They will celebrate the same concept and have the same ideas, but the actual words and actions will be different for each. If you happen to read about one that you like, try it out. It's okay to fumble the words and to get the actions wrong and goof up and forget to bring the cakes for cakes and wine, for instance. The gods are lenient. They're okay with you not being perfect. Your intent is what really matters in these rituals, not the words. Again, your intent is more important than the actual words or even the actions. If you draw the pentagram wrong, it's okay. Get it right next time. No big deal. You're new, just learning. You'll get better as time rolls on, but for now, jump in and do it. Don't be afraid to ritual with like-minded friends too. Just make sure you're all on the same page and treating it as a celebration or whatever you're doing, as well as it's a learning experience also. The same goes with spell work. Some people will tell you not to work with spells as a beginner. I say rock it. If you happen to run across a spell that you'd like to try out, especially if it corresponds with a need that you desire at the time, do it. But you have to know it's gonna work. If you have any doubt in your mind that you're gonna fail at it, then don't even bother. You have to know it's gonna work. Set it up and mold it to fit you and your liking. A spell from a book that you read doesn't make it any more powerful than a spell that you simply make up yourself. It's not the spell, it's your intent going into the spell. In fact, most spells are actually put in motion before a witch even starts the spell. The energy and intent you put into simply researching, purchasing the ingredients, and setting everything up is actually a huge part of the energy working at hand, and in fact, is then just waiting for you to execute the spell to then release the energy from the circle and send it on its way towards your destination or target. Again, don't be afraid to screw up. Your intention is everything. Okay, if you are a young witch and still live with your parents in their home, it's best to respect their wishes. Hopefully you have very open-minded parents who don't mind you dabbling with your newfound passion. However, if your parents are not okay with this and not understanding it, don't go against their wishes and bring it into their home. I know, and you know, it's no big deal at all and very benevolent, but they aren't going to get that. It's the years of conditioning that paints a very dark picture against witchcraft. Use your imagination and practice however you can. Does it have to be in their house though? Not really. Another practice that should be done as a beginning witch and carried out through the rest of your career as a witch is to make yourself a personal altar and place it in an area of your home that you will see each day. This altar should contain trinkets, stones, imagery of deity, and whatever else you like to help in tune your energy with your present condition and interest per the path or interest you are currently journeying. I've linked in the info box above a great video on sacred spaces and altars to learn more, and also linked it in the description below. Don't scream you're a witch from the mountaintops to everybody just yet. It's very exciting and the journey is so exhilarating and you just want to run and tell everyone about your new excitement and passion. And I understand your elation to scream it out, but this isn't the wisest move on the board. Keep it to yourself for a bit, don't go crazy. The fact is, there are still a lot of people in the world who don't get it and they just don't understand. And even though you see witchcraft as a wonderful, benevolent creature, no matter what picture you try to paint, some people are never gonna get past the stigmata that has been ingrained in their minds since they were children. You can tell others, but make sure you pick and choose wisely. Those who you know are going to reciprocate and understand your position. Just be careful who you tell, and also realize that these people are going to tell 10 more people you don't even know about. It can get really dirty really fast. Another tip I can give as a beginner witch is to learn about the elements earth, air, fire, and water, and all of the correspondences that revolve around each one. The elements are the witch's power. They are very important to understand and learn. They make up everything in our realm, and magically we utilize the 4 elements on a daily basis. Learn about them and understand them and their associations with the world around us. Take each one into yourself and journey with that spirit of a particular element for a given time period. Figure 30 days walking with each one. Invite each elemental spirit into your life and learn from it for 30 days. Keep a journal and write down your dreams and experiences. I have included a path working in the description below to begin you with a journey with the element of air. After you've listened to this path working, you'll be in essence walking and journeying with these spirits of air until you release them. I've also included the release in the description below. Walk with the elementals of air and journal each day about your conscious experience. As you're walking with air for the next 30 days, also learn everything everything you can about this element. Not only do you learn something, it also helps you to connect with those spirits and feed them the attention they need to help you in your spiritual life. After air, do fire, and then water, and then earth. I'll be doing a video on these shortly in the near future. You're also going to meet a lot of people with other ideas and opinions on things that may not match up to what you learned or your ideas. This is okay. Be humble, be open to other opinions, and keep your mind open to others' ideas and viewpoints. No one is right or wrong. It's inherent in many people that their minds and conditioning tell them that they have to be right and win an argument. And there are two things in this world that have led to fighting, arguments, family members separating, longtime friends ending their relationships, and even major causes of most wars between countries today, and that is politics and religion. It's not worth it. You have what you embrace. Let that person embrace their opinion and ideals. No one has to be right, no one has to be wrong. Part of being a good witch is knowing when to say okay and let others have their ideas. I'm not saying don't stand up for yourself, I'm saying respect others' opinions and ideas. Okay, one last thing. Black and white magic. It doesn't exist. Magic is magic. It has no color and has no good or bad. It is what it is. The person's intent using the magic is a whole other story. People make negative or positive use of neutral magic. Magic is simply the energy that has been raised, programmed, and sent to achieve the goal of the witch or magician. There is no spell that calls on negative energies to do your bidding. Same goes for positive magic. There is no working that calls on positive energy to do your working. You raise the energy, neutral energy, that is neither constructive or destructive. You then tell the energy what you want it to be and why. At this point, you send the energy out to affect your target wherever and sometimes whomever it may be. So you are the good or bad, black or white, destructive or constructive, not the magic. Okay, guys and gals, this being said, I think it's time to wrap up this episode of Witch into Working. Once again, thank you for watching my channel and this video. Please subscribe down below and tap that bell for reminders going forward. Give me a thumbs up if you liked this video or a thumbs down if you didn't. Let me know in the comments below if you have any thoughts or ideas to be added to this list of helpful tips for beginners in witchcraft. I love you guys and gals. See you again next week. See you later.